Hey there, welcome to Candidly Copilot, and I am your host, missing a hat, Mike Gannotti, along with my co-host,
Chad Stout.
Here we go. Now I feel like I'm ready. And there were some big announcements today, Chad.
Yeah, some pretty big announcements. I don't think technically much changes, but some announcements around how all this works. Pretty informational.
And I think, we've already, you told me just a little bit ago, we are already getting questions from customers because, we make this announcement where Satya gets out and talks, which is great because everybody pays attention. It's like when Satya talks, people listen. But, and it's true. So now people are, whoa, what does this mean? And I like what you said, a lot technically doesn't change, but things around licensing and enablement and some others that have real positive implications for our customers do. So. And so I think we're going to go through that today, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to hit it at a high level, Mike. I think in subsequent episodes, we'll dive in and get into the additional details, talk about things like the control plane, talk about things like, hey, what does metering mean, right? How does it work? Things of that nature. But yeah, we're going to hit it at a high level, kind of burn through this as quickly as we can, get the information into your hands as quickly as we possibly can. Because I'm telling you, Mike, I've been hit up for the last half hour since the discussion ended.
Me too.
Not only internally, but externally, how does all this work? So hopefully we can get a message out here.
And I think it's important, just remember, folks, as we're going through this, there are a lot of details that we could spend we spent a couple hours this morning going through them internally. So, the key here is really, we're going to go through, like Chad said, at a high level, really focusing too and discussing some of the implications as we talk from the perspective of healthcare and life science and what that means. And then the big takeaway is go and talk to your account teams. Set up a meeting. They can get their TSs involved, the SSPs, all those folks to go through, because it's not only here's what's being enabled and the new licensing and things that are there, but what does it mean for your organization in particular?
Yeah, I mean, whoever you have as the Microsoft contact, if you have questions, reach out to them. It doesn't have to be the full account team. They'll get you to the right people. We can have the deep dive discussions. We can get you straightened out.
Yep. So we're going to do something we normally don't do. We have a deck to make sure that we don't go far afield, to keep us on track. So the first thing, you want to talk to this?
Yeah, I certainly can, Mike. So I think, right, a lot of people have probably already seen this slide. It's been out since Ignite, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, it may have been out since Wave 2. I'm not sure, but somewhere in there. So it's probably been floating around for a month and a half. We position this as, hey, look, from this point and into the future, Copilot is your UI or for AI. Right. And what does that mean? From a Copilot perspective, that means I have a personal productivity agent that helps me, right? A companion that helps me get my day-to-day work done through the apps that we all know and hopefully love. Microsoft Office 365 apps, or apps for enterprise, as we call it today. And then this idea of agents, right? Yeah. So what are agents good at? They're good at, right, automating processes, maybe even reinventing processes within your organizations. And when I say processes, workflows. So common things that you do on a daily basis that may somewhat seem mundane, these agents can take care of it for you, right? They can even take care of it for you on your behalf without any intervention. So that's kind of the difference. The way that we've laid it out, at least for our customers, is to think of it in those terms.
And I just add as well that, we have all these scenarios like you were talking about, even on behalf, et cetera, but it can even be with an agent as simple as narrowing down and focusing the field of scope, what you're doing with AI, right? So I think about one of my customers, they have these clinician tip sheets. They've got boatloads of them, and those tip sheets are big, a lot of data, but they're documents. And they said, we can't, they're useless now because there's so many. How do we derive value? So I was able to show them just creating a simple agent with Agent Builder in Copilot, being able to go and narrow the field of scope, give it some, 6 pre-prompted suggested prompts, and get real value right away using ICD-10 codes and saying boom, boom, and get it what they need. So it can be simple, but all the way to autonomous things that are happening. But the UI for everything is
Copilot.
Yeah. And that's today's announcement, the big, because not everybody could have Copilot front and center, right? Previous.
That's right.
You had to have a license.
Well, and if you look at our stated objective here at Microsoft, right, it's kind of become part of our mission statement in many ways, a Copilot for everyone on every device, right? So I think this is right our effort in reaching that goal, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. That's exactly right. So let's kind of dive into a little of what we're talking about, and adoption curve.
Yeah, Mike. So, we've been doing it now. I mean, the product itself has been in the hands of customers, I think, button up to close to 2 years, especially for those folks that got invited very early on.
Yeah.
But for most of the general population, I would say it's been available for 1.5 years, right? If you count EAP through GA and beyond, it's been out there for about 1.5 years. And, just like we had to make adjustments in the speed of cloud, right, as IT folks, we're having to make that adjustment yet again in the age of AI. This stuff is moving fast, right?
Yeah.
So in a 1.5 years time, right, we've kind of realized that there is an AI adoption curve that's pretty consistent across all customers, regardless of industry, right? It's essentially providing access to AI, right? And providing access to AI, what we've learned is we have to provide that access, right, within budget constraints. It's very ROI kind of, there's a very perspective of, right, we've got to get some ROI on this pretty quickly because, it is a pretty expensive SKU. Right. So Microsoft's, as part of this announcement today, we're going to broaden access to Copilot.
Yeah.
Right. And then I already kind of spoke to ROI, right? That's a very important part of this. And the reason I believe, right, much of that reason is it's a pricey SKU. And then at the end of the day, right, even before we got into this concept around agents, it really was, right, a lot of discussions around security, governance. Can we trust this technology? How do we trust it? How did you build it for us to trust it? Right?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. The AI adoption curve, that is what we've learned up to this point in 1.5 years time frame.
And getting that into place. Awesome. Yeah, I got nothing to add. I got nothing. So let's kind of dive into when we talk about today and the things that were announced, right? There's really the 3 different, and we'll touch on IT controls, but we're actually our next podcast, we're going to dive deep into that.
Yep.
But do you want to start us off here, and then I'll add my 2 cents?
Yeah, I think the big thing here, honestly, I mean, you're kind of seeing a portion of our AI ecosystem platform, right? The spectrum of what we offer, and what the big announcement, I think, for customers today, right? The big bang for the buck here for our customers is Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, right? You're getting free, secure AI chat powered by GPT-4o on web grounded data, right? So
Yeah.
that in and of itself goes beyond what a lot of our competitors are willing to give away.
We're doing those enterprise safeguards that we have in place for that web grounded, that you pay for if you want something similar. You have to pay for with our competitors, but here you're getting that, right?
Yeah,
built in.
You're getting that. So that's the big win for customers. The next step is around agents, and I believe we'll look back, right? We'll look back at some point in the future at agents and say, wow, you talk about business transformation right here, right? As you mentioned, this is right, the ability to scope that LLM, right? To scope Copilot to look at very specific pieces of data, right? Whether that's data in a SharePoint document library, whether that's data in a Dataverse, whether that's data in a SQL database, whether that's data that includes all three of those repositories, right? And the ability to essentially automate workflows and processes, get information into the hands of people that need it as quickly as possible through this concept of agents.
Again, I'm going to go back to my earlier example with just those clinicians, right? So I think about like this particular org, they were buying Copilot licenses for non-clinicians, right? They were doing it for clinician managers. They were doing it for HR and IT. But for their clinicians, they're like, look, these folks are out on the floor. They are going patient to patient. I don't need a full client for them because they're not doing all the traditional productivity stuff. They're more like a frontline worker in that aspect, although they're not, right? But much more like that. So, but by not having that, Copilot Chat UI, because they're not licensed, there was no way to deliver an agent to them. So they would have had to have done that and then develop the agent. Now what they can do, and we'll get into this a little more in a bit, but they can have that free Copilot Chat, develop a use case specific agent, deploy it to those folks, and have a chargeback.
Yeah.
A pay-as-you-go chargeback model just for them to provide what they need, not all the other.
Yep. That's a great example, right, of what we see, at least in the healthcare provider space, right?
Yeah.
Is you've got physicians that need access to information that may be in different places. I know they spend most of their time in an EMR, right? Any clinical worker spends most of their day in the EMR.
Absolutely.
So where's the impactful data for them, right? It's usually in an EMR, right? It's in an operating procedure document. It's something that is, maybe not necessarily within their email, right? Or within their OneDrive. So that's the second most important part of this announcement, right? That we can provide this capability. We can provide this, we can provide this service, right, to others that need it, right? Again, our goal is to get Copilot in the hands of every user on every device. So agents is a way to help us do that.
And again, and the final piece, IT controls, that we've had this for a while for web grounding. Enterprise data protection is important because sensitive data and things getting in and out of the internet. Chad disappeared on me. I think it's because of the dog in the background. That's all right. So, that's important that we have that. And again, we're going to touch on that in our next. You should invite. There we go. The dog's in. I love it. Man, it's dogs. Dogs just throw me. But we're going to hit more on that on our next one. But it is important to note, we're providing across the board. We're not just saying roll this thing out and it's this, unprotected Wild West, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. I love this slide, actually, Mike. This is a really good slide. It gives you an illustration of what this is all about, right? So You're getting Copilot Chat, free secure AI chat for everyone,
Yes.
right? If you need these additional components, chat on work content grounded data.
Like your
right?
SharePoint data, your email.
Yep. You want that experience in your M365 apps. You want access to agents, the Copilot control system, and the analytics that come by way of really insights, right? Then you pay the extra money for M365 Copilot.
Yeah.
I know that's list price. Some of our customers negotiate for better pricing. They all do. But this is a great illustration of the difference, right? Between what you get for free and what you got to pay for.
And we're going to get real granular on it in just a second, because it's always the devil's in the details, right? So here we are, devil's in the details. So we're going to go line by line, folks. Get ready.
No, we're not.
So I do want to highlight just real quickly. I mean, this makes it readily apparent, right? If you look at, here is that free chat, right, that we're now enabling for everybody to have for their organization. Here is the 365 Copilot, full-on license. These two areas, and I'll hit on them in a second, that represents consumption, right? But if you take, let's say I even just drop those out, what you're going to get with Copilot for everybody today is the following. Number one, we already talked about this, that web-grounded chat powered by GPT 4.0. You're going to get it out of the box, no charge. You can just deploy this, put it in your employees' hands, and they'll have the same interface as everybody else who even has a full license and the ability to do those kind of queries. You are not going to have the work grounded, and you mentioned that, right? So work grounded means really about my data, my emails, calendars, my OneDrive, but also that corporate tenant data, right? Like SharePoint and all that information. There is one thing that kind of slips out of that when you think about Microsoft 365 and that tenant data, and that is this, the Copilot pages, which we introduced Wave 2, correct? Or was that Ignite?
Yep.
It was one of the
two. No, it was Wave 2. Yeah.
Wave 2. So Copilot pages, for those, just to be clear what that means, you can go into Copilot, you can put your query and then say, add to pages, because you want to collaborate on it now with a colleague through Teams, right? Typically.
With the colleague and the AI, right?
And the AI, yes, because you still have Copilot right there.
Yeah.
But what it does is build a loop, Microsoft Loop page, and they're saying that you will still have Copilot pages. That loop page is your Copilot page. So
here's something that I think is really cool. The next one, right?
Yeah.
File upload. So
yes, I used this yesterday.
Although you don't have access to work grounded data, right? You can conceivably take a Word document, right, and do a file upload and ask for a summary, or a PowerPoint presentation for that matter. So you can still kind of leverage some work data, but it's got to be the work data you have access to, and it's not a broader comparison, right, to what you have available to you via the Microsoft Graph through security permissions. Excuse me.
They're local files that you have. You want to do some work around them, get some help around them. You can upload it, and then, like you said, summarize, query it, ask questions. You get this huge file. I don't have time for all this. You can ask specific questions, rephrase this, do that. In that context, you can work with an individual file. So that's pretty cool. And I actually showed that to some folks. We also have code interpreter. Oh,
yeah, you'll see. Yeah, I wanted to make sure to call out, you'll see that superscript and reference to limit supply. So limits do apply for file upload, code interpreter, and image generation. You may have already ran up against those yourselves. If you haven't, there are publicly available resources that describe those limits. Just ask Copilot for help, and it'll tell you what those limits are.
Yeah, you just said something. I just want even with slides, I go sideways. If you ever have a question about something with Copilot, ask Copilot. So I was with a demo with customers the other day, and they didn't know how to do, they were having problems with their prompts. I said, if you ask Copilot how to make the prompt.
Yeah.
What? I said, here we go.
Yeah.
And it gave these great prompts. And then it helped them iterate to drill down further. So yeah, ask Copilot what the limits are. Code interpreter. So for folks doing code stuff, you want to real quickly, anything you have to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, if I've got, actually, I've used this a little bit, Mike, because I'm not much of a coder. Back in the day, I used to be, pretty strong with PowerShell scripting and things of that nature. But actual code through .NET, right? Even, some of the simpler stuff they're using today. I dipped my toes in it long enough to realize, you're not real good at this. So code interpreter can certainly help me to understand if I see a piece of code, right, or a customer shares a piece of code and says, I'm having an issue here, right? A lot of times I can't look at that code and right off the bat say, well, I kind of know what you're doing, right? I can use code interpreter to tell me what that code means. Like, what is it doing and where might it be falling down?
Yeah.
So code interpreter, another one that they included for free. I think that's pretty amazing, right? That's a real value add for our customers in specific use for specific use cases.
Especially for the IT folks, right? I mean, that's like the no-brainer to have that. And then another one, now you could do this. They had introduced this in the web version, but I'm glad to see it now just coming native, so I don't have to go somewhere separate. But, we do leverage under the hood with Copilot. We leverage DALL-E, right? I think it's 3 right now is the version. So if you want to do image generation, you can just ask it, I need an image of the following or a picture of the following, and it's going to provide you a royalty-free image that you own, that's yours. It's not our rights. That's never existed in the history of the world and will never be replicated again.
I like image generator. I like the images that we were generating for Candidly Copilot. I use
down with that.
Yeah. I use it quite a bit. Because I'm in front of customers. I'm doing shows like these internally at Microsoft, Tech Talks, right? Tech Topics, and to be able to quickly create an image based on, right, the content that you've prepared, it's great. It just it puts the fine finish right on a presentation for me anyway.
I can tell you, I've showed demoing Word, Copilot and Word and PowerPoint to folks. They get all excited, but then those who are attending and who don't have the license, now they can do that. They can still generate it, take it, drop it into a Word doc, drop it into PowerPoint as needed.
Some value there. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's on that chat portion, right? So again, the one area that you don't get that you do with 365 is all that tenant data. So if you're looking to provide that, that's your licensed. Agents. So agents is a big thing. So previously, if you didn't have the Copilot 365 license, you could not deploy an agent because you needed Copilot to surface the agent, right? But now that we're providing it so that everybody can have that, we're going to be able to do that. So it says, number one, create agents using Copilot Studio. And it does mention learn about full capabilities, etc. But you got to have the studio. There's licensing and stuff around Studio. That's separate. And that says including SharePoint agents. So, being able to do some of that. Discover and pin agents, that's built in to that client right here.
Yeah, and the experience around pinning agents, right? You'll have
Yep.
different channels in which you can pin those agents, right? I can pin it within my Copilot chat within Teams. I can pin it within my Copilot chat within the Edge browser, right? I can pin it via other channels as well, but those are the two primary channels where that agent gets exposed.
And the next one I love because it is a use case. We're in healthcare and life sciences, and I can envision it with other, vertical industries. But use agents grounded in web data.
We used to do a lot of demos on this.
Flipping awesome. Why? Because healthcare. I get asked all the time, like the same customer who I was doing the tip sheets with. We're talking about. They started talking about, well, what about other data, like the CDC,
CMS, the CDC,
all this stuff that's out there on the web, where we're following and tracking the latest numbers and datas and reports around, novovirus, whatever, right? There's a million things going, it's like a daily turn into a meeting and who's running the bathroom because somebody got the latest bug. But in the hospital setting, that's important. Like our manager just had, somebody close to him had surgery, and with sicknesses, you got to monitor all that, right? So how can they do? They can build hospitals right now, could deploy this agent. I'm getting excited. Yeah. It just hit me thinking about this. They could build an agent, right? That somebody who's licensed for a studio builder could build it, but then they can build an agent that they surface that's just web data.
Yep.
CDC
it's just scoped up. Yeah, it's scoped on that specific data, right? That's publicly available. Yeah. And you don't have to wade through anything that you might think is, maybe somewhat hallucinogenic.
Yeah. Right. And when we're not talking about PHI data or any of that, we're talking about publicly available information, web grounded data. So you do have that. But then we get into what a lot of stuff they really want to do. Right. And I have, I have one of my customers does clinical trials and stuff. When we were talking, they have a bunch of use cases for those folks managing them, specific internal. They're very data driven. Well, that's where we get into now. They have a platform to provide them Copilot, then build the agents that are specific. And that would then go into this, which is that it's included, but it is the metered charge, that pay-as-you-go model.
Right. And quite frankly, I mean, to me, from a business perspective, from an engineering perspective, from a costs of goods perspective, this just makes sense, right? Yeah. Like to do that grounding on specific work data, right? To essentially prompt and get a response that is compute, that is memory, that is a lot of electricity, as we all know. So there's got to be a way.
Power plant.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to kind of meter consumption and get some of that
absolutely
back, right? To at least cover, what we're burning here. But this part kind of makes sense to me. I know there are a ton of questions. I get them. I've gotten them right since Ignite. We continue to get them. The picture itself is a little more clear now. If you just look at this beautiful slide, right? The picture is obviously a lot more clear. Yeah. But if you have questions, in fact, if it's a topic you'd like us to break out into its own episode, please let us know through chat. Let us know through, contacting us in any way, in any way possible, in the ways that are available. We can certainly dive into it a bit. It makes sense to me. In the old day, we sold consumption packs, right? Like metered prepaid metered packs. We still do that, but now there's a second way to do it around, right? Metered messages We'll have a calculator, right, that can anticipate your cost of running that agent on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. Don't quite have those in hand yet, but I know that will be a major concern for most of our customers. Hey, I want to build this agent. It's going to really help us. We know our kind of ROI, but we don't know what it's going to cost us to run it on a monthly basis. You need to know that, right?
And we're going to get to in the next slide, which is our last slide. We're going to get to about that because a lot around that charge, because a lot of the customers, you know, I had a conversation yesterday with a global enterprise customer and very excited. I mean, they love agents. The problem they had with agents was buying these packs. They said, look, you know, the custom stuff we're doing on Azure with Azure AI and all that, if, you know, that is a much, the way it's handled, and I don't want to say the word yet, we'll say it in the next slide, biting my tongue, but it's handled in a way that facilitates chargebacks internally, right? And so we're going to have that available for you, and we're going to hit that in a moment. But those are the charges. The next section, personal assistant, again, you know, just that is the realm of M365 Copilot license. Prepare me for a meeting, give me synopsis of my meeting, generate a Word doc, I mean, that's all, that's there. There are two in preview I do want to highlight for those who are getting the license, the Copilot actions, which is very cool. And then these, I think, are awesome. These pre-built agents that they'll have that are in preview right now. We've got interpreter, facilitator, project manager.
Yeah.
That's
and
big.
Employee self-service. It is big.
My son, Sam, who is a project manager, take note. And then employee self-service, right? So those are all here. That's all squarely the realm of the licensed 365 user.
Yep, exactly right, Mike. Just two quick comments on that. Copilot actions, right? Think about autonomous agents, right? So that agent having the ability to do something on your behalf, right? Whether that's sending an email, whether that's talking to another agent to deliver the content for it to take action on. So that's what actions are all about. And again, the pre-built agents, you nailed it, right? I've already had conversations around interpreter. It's a huge one, right? Especially for our global customers.
Yeah.
Facilitator, we've talked a lot about it. People think it's cool. It's going to show, right, some value. Add it to a meeting and it takes care of most of the work, right? Project manager, actually, we've ran through that with the customer, a couple customers on my end anyway. Pretty like massive value there, right?
Yeah.
And then of course employee self-service, right? Like, you know how frustrating it is to get help from IT around a specific, like reset my password, right? Or hey, provision a new device. You know how aggravating that can get? Employee self-service, even going to HR and asking like, how much PTO do I have? Or what's my company's policy? My wife's pregnant. Do I get some time off to spend with my new child? Like, that's the area of employee self-service. I've seen it in action. We're working through it internally here at Microsoft in very small cohorts of users. It's pretty amazing, kind of the initial numbers that are coming back on that. I think that's going to be a big hit.
Yeah. But again, that's all the realm. When you go beyond just needing a mission specific agent, that's all part of that overall. Because again, now, if I have the Copilot license, all these things that I'm able to do over here, I'm able to do with that plus all this other. So, you know, again, it's where's that differentiation? The cost is a weighing consideration, you know, the license monthly charge versus pay as you go charge model, and then the features that you require. Copilot control system. So a couple of things here that I think are important. First, that we already talked about it, but enterprise data protection or EDP, you get that with and that's to really safeguard that whole web grounded experience, right? We're not going to touch on it and dive into it here. We said next week we're going to do one on the IT controls, et cetera. But you do get a bunch of control for this, and we want to allay concerns around that. So we are hitting on that. And I'll have links to documentation so you can even go do some lookup of that on yourself. Agent management is going to be a big area that people want to know. How do I manage and control? Because I don't want an agent everywhere. And I heard some internal folks even say, well, there's no way to control it. But if agents are enabled, everybody can agent and it's everywhere and blah. And that's not really true.
No.
We have controls. So we'll hit on that. The areas, though, that you don't get for these users. So, you might think, well, one thing that we announced was if you had the full license for your users, you got this SharePoint Advanced Management, which really helps to corral. A lot of folks moved to the web, just moved everything from the file shares right on up, and they punted their re-examination. Oversharing, and they kind of hit ostriches head in the sand, said, okay, yeah, they can see it and search, but it's one of 10 trillion million results. And Copilot and AI kind of said, well, I can see it real clear and bring it right back. So they got a little nervous. We introduced inclusion of SharePoint Advanced Management with this, but you don't get that with the freemium. And that's an important distinction.
Yeah. Same goes for analytics. Yep. Right. So we included the insights. That's right. We included the Viva Insights license in the Copilot for M365 user license. So that's, that comes at a cost to Microsoft. So it's not going to be included in the M365 users. Copilot Chat. Right.
Yeah. For those users, the ones who are licensed will have that available. Those won't. And then, of course, the pre-built reports. So, again, we could go ad nauseum through each of these and spend a whole bunch of time. Talk to your account teams who would be happy to, because I know Chad and I are going to be doing this ad nauseum with 1 million people firing questions at us. But last one, and I only want to say one thing about this. Can decrement Mac. So that customer I mentioned, they're already doing Azure AI. That means their Azure commitments through the Mac, they have a very predictable model for charges and chargebacks in there, which is the important distinction. They're able to do chargeback because of the Mac internally, which really helps them to be able to move forward. Message packs, that means they're taking, IT or whoever has that budget's taking it all on. Here they can do that chargeback. And if you roll this out and provide mission-specific agents, you're going to be able to leverage your existing Azure commitments through the Mac to do your pay-as-you-go charges.
Yep. Kind of old way, new way.
And actually,
quite frankly, Mike, from what I understand, New Way was highly motivated by customer feedback.
Yeah, because it's really not a new way. It's just new to 365 versus Azure. Yeah. I had a meeting yesterday with a customer who that's what we spent. He's probably going to be watching. So, hey, Sam. So we talked for 30 minutes about this. That's what it all came down to. We had a meeting scheduled to talk about the new and what do you use for where. And it really was all about, look, I think this is great, but I need a chargeback model because I can't own the total cost. My budget's gone. Right.
Yes.
And this provides that model. So, and again,
direct result of customer feedback.
Yeah.
A direct result of customer feedback. Yep.
So when you schedule that meeting, if you have feedback, yell and scream. It's okay. We get it all. We understand. We're out there with you. We get it.
Yeah.
But
and as Mike said earlier, contact your account team. Honestly, at the end of the day, just contact your contact at Microsoft. We'll get the right people on the horn with you to discuss any of what you saw in greater detail.
Yeah, and the other thing, we're going to have the resources, and Chad, you called this out. This is a fast changing landscape. There's more stuff that'll be coming.
Yeah.
So what we're telling you today could be outdated, or have additional things, whatever. So the key is talk to your account team. They have the latest information in their hands, just like we do. And then where there's gaps, you can yell. We'll take that feedback and we'll yell to other people who will take that and do the customer feedback. Because ultimately in the end, we want our customers successful. I think that's the big takeaway too is, look, we know people wanted agents. They needed something to provide agents without full license. We want customers to be successful. I mean, if you're successful, we're successful. If you're not happy and not successful, we're not. So just makes sense.
And hey, if you have interest in the Copilot control plane, and kind of diving into, how do we manage and securely distribute, these agents, tune in next week. We're going to have a discussion that dives in deeply there.
Awesome. You got any last words?
That was it.
So we want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen. Check the links below. And then call your account team. So with that, it's Mike.
Chad.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care. And as always, have a great week and ciao.
Have a good week.